Hey everyone, welcome back to the SOC Analyst L1 series, day 21. I'm really happy to see you all continuing this amazing journey. Till now, we have covered Windows logs, Linux logs, SIM tools, threat intelligence, and MITRA ATTCK framework. And today, we are taking a huge step forward because the topic is detecting common attack. Because as a SOC analyst, this is where the real action begins. So prevention alone isn't enough. Your job is to detect, analyze, and respond before it is too late. Okay, so we are going to start today's session. As I am seeing many people are still joining, so without further delay, let's start. So those who are watching it live, welcome everyone. Welcome Arya, welcome Bhuvan. So hope you enjoy this session today. So let's start. So the very first thing is uh, how to detect these common attacks. So like whenever you are monitoring or whenever you are analyzing as an SOC analyst, so you have to detect the common cyber attacks using logs, using event analysis, or using the attacker's behavior or attacker's pattern. So in this particular section, in this particular topic, you will learn like how to detect the or how to think like a real world SOC mindset, right? And you will understand how common attacks will appear in the logs, or how you can apply the MITRA ATTK or CK knowledge to detect patterns that we will cover earlier on this series. Okay, so first is why these detection matters. Actually, why these detection matters. So see, no matter how strong your firewalls or how strong your antiviruses are, the attackers will always find some new path to basically attack on your infrastructure, on your application, on your network, on your applications, right? So that's why the detection is basically the heart of SOC operation, right? So early detection, that means you can take a quick response, and you can reduce the damage. So it directly proportional to like if you detect early, you can reduce the damage. Okay, so today we will understand the attack patterns, how they will look in logs, how we as analyst can identify them before escalation. So the common attack categories are like brute force attack. In this attack, particularly the attacker want to launch some kind of word list based attack, and the primary goal of the attacker is like maybe he want to access some of your infrastructure logins, or maybe your some services like SSH or maybe FTP or some more services. So he will basically, or attackers will launch the brute force attack patterns. Then phishing and credential theft. So in this, basically the goal of the attacker is to uh, redirect the legitimate users to some phishing websites, or steal the credentials or steal the session cookies, so then after he can log in into your system. Then we have malware infection. So somehow attacker wants to drop some kind of malware into your infrastructure, into your application, or maybe your network, so he can connect back to your system or access or can control your systems. Then privilege escalation, that means a low level user can escalate things to or perform things to high level users, right? Then lateral movement or data exfiltration. So these are the common major attacks we will cover today. And these each attacks leaves behind some digital footprints. Okay, so whenever you are basically examining those attacks, or you are detecting those attacks, so you will basically look out the logs, the event IDs, or maybe network traffic. Your job is to detect those footprints, like the cyber detectives. Okay, so I will talk about every common attack patterns and how you will basically detect it. So I will share some common methodologies which will help you in your SOC journey to detect those attacks, right? So the very first attack we have is brute force attacks. So I basically created this session depends like how the indicators are. Suppose in your infrastructure, I'm particularly saying the infrastructure, but that doesn't mean like if it is only happening on your infrastructure, maybe this particular attack is happening on your application, or in your network, or in your mobile application, or your cloud infrastructure, or your ICT. That doesn't mean, right? So basically, whatever kind of organization, infrastructure, application you have, there are some indicators. That means this particular attack is happening somewhere, so you can detect it early. So what are the indicators of this brute force? Is like multiple failed login attempt. That means the attacker is basically trying to guess the user ID or password, or maybe email ID or password, while launching a set of word list using some tool or using some technique. So in your log, in your system, there will be multiple failed login attempts, because suppose the attacker is launching the attack using some word list. So when the attack is launched, and in the word list the wrong password pattern is observed, so in your log it will be a failed login attempt will be logged. So we already discussed about the event IDs. So for this particular multiple failed login attempts, we have the event ID in the perspective of Windows. It will be 4625. Okay, so if you observe in your logs, like you are seeing multiple 4625 event IDs, so that might be your indications like someone is trying to launch the brute force attack. So you will have to learn about these event IDs, and which we already talked about in our previous sessions. You can check that out. You can check out the playlist. So I think the 10 or I think the 13-14 session will be uh, based on this event ID detections, right? And then the second indicator was the sudden like successful logins after multiple failures. So in this particular indication, what you will get to know, like the attacker is basically trying to log in into your system with a word list or with the brute force attack, and they failed multiple times. So the event ID 4625 will be created, but as if your password is not particularly that much secure and somehow attacker got the password, so now you will see a successful login. So all of sudden, whenever you are receiving multiple failures and then suddenly a successful login was found, so that might be the indication of brute force attack. So the successful login event ID will be 4624. Then the third indications was like the repeated logins from same IP or user. If a particular IP or if a particular user you are observing in the logs, like if they are trying to log in multiple times in a short period of time, or if the same IP is being used to log in multiple times. So that might be an indication for brute force attacks, right? So how you will detect it? So you have to analyze the logs. We already talked about it. And in the logs, you have to observe the pattern of event IDs for 625 for failed logins or for 624 for successful logins. Okay, so can anyone tell me like where you will find those event IDs in your Windows system? Where you will find it? So if you know about the path or if you know about the structure, so you can let me know in the comment how you will find or where you will find those event IDs or where those events will be logged into your system. I'm talking about in the perspective of Windows. So if you know the answer, let me, you can comment it. Okay. The next is detecting the SSH brute force. SSH is basically a protocol that is used in the network to share the system with anyone. Basically, it is used for remote logins. Suppose in your organization, if someone was not able to, or someone you want to share your network or you want to share your operating system with someone that is not in your organization but live somewhere else, so you will use SSH protocol for remote logins. So if an attacker logged in your SSH server, so they can access your system or control your system and can execute the commands. Okay, so if SSH brute force attack is launched via the by the attacker, so how you will detect it? So the indicators are multiple failed logins. So there is a path in Linux which is var log auth dot log. This particular directory will store all the authentication logins. Okay, so if I'm going to show you like the authentications, so you can clearly see it. So let's see. So there will be a directory called slash var slash log. In this particular directory, all the logs will be stored. You are seeing here multiple log files, which is like boot login files or dvwa or whatever services I'm using right now in my system. So there are multiple log files are there. So if the multiple failed login attempts was launched or created in your system or onto your system, so a file will be created called auth.log, right? In that file, suppose right now I do not have that file because I do not uh, launch the attack, but like this file is not there. But if you read that file or if the file was present, so what you will see in that file, you will see entries for multiple failed login attempt, and then you will get the idea like uh, somehow the attacker is basically launching the SSH brute force attack. So you can observe uh, the multiple failed logins in that file. You can observe the repeated attempts from the same IP as we are already discussed in the perspective of Windows. And suppose you are not able to particularly find that file in your system, so there will be a command. In this particular command, I use the AWK and sorting technique to grab the failed password value from the log file. Okay, so you can use it. Then we how to detect the phishing attempts. So this is another attack. So we have some more indications, like if someone is trying to perform phishing in your infrastructure, in your application, right? So the indications are suspicious emails with attachments or links. If you are receiving some suspicious emails where the user was unknown or maybe username is somehow you observe like this will be tricky, though this, so they have, you receive some kind of email with attachments or links, so that might be an indication. Users reporting unknown login alert, like in your email environment, wherever your email is basically operated, you see multiple login alert. Like if I take this particular an example of Google, so whenever you are logging into your account, suppose your Facebook account from some unknown location, so you will receive a login alert in the Google, right? Like someone is trying to access your account. So if you are receiving multiple fake or multiple unknown login alerts in your mail, so that might be an indications like someone or someone somewhere is trying to launch the phishing attack. And then some outbound connections to suspicious domain. If your connection is basically uh, outbounded to some suspicious domains, so this is also a phishing indication. So how you can detect it? So obviously you will have to monitor your email gateway, whatever gateway you are using. If you are using Zoho, like Zoho is now next new big thing. So if you are using Zoho, if you are using Outlook, if you are using Gmail, so you have to monitor your Gmail, sorry, you have to monitor your email gateways. You have to analyze it, you have to check for the keywords, you have to check for attachments, you have to check for links. Or you can also check for the login attempts for new geolocations. Okay, so the MITRA ID is T1566 for phishing. So as we already discussed this in the previous session, so you can check out that session, like what is this MITRA ID. Then how to detect the malware infections? So the indicators are like unusual processes in your operating system, in your infrastructure. If you are seeing like the process is created, like the PowerShell process is created, if the cmd.exe process is created, so that might be an indication like somewhere somehow installed some malware into your system and they launched or they opened the PowerShell or cmd. So you have to observe the processes. So like in Windows you can open the task manager, but in Linux you have to run the command to check the processes. So we have some commands like top, like ps. So I'm going to show you some of the Linux commands of how to observe or how to check out those processes. So let's see. So this will be a command top. Top command is basically used to check out all the processes. So this is all the processes you can check out. There is one more command like psaux. So all the processes will be listed in using that command, right? So you need to check out all the processes that are running into your system, and using that you can observe if any suspicious processes or any suspicious process id was created. And then after you can this might be your indication, like someone or somewhere is trying to launch the malware attack, right? File creation in temporary or system folders. So somehow some files are created in your temporary directory or your system folders, so that might be an indications. If your traffic is outbound to unknown IPs, because suppose your traffic is basically forwarded to some unknown IPs, so that might be also your indications. So you have to check out your inbound, outbound or inbound connections. If you observe some unknown IPs, so that might be the indication. So the Windows event IDs for these particular things, which is 4688 for new process creation. So if you observe or if you only search for event ID 4688, so you will get to know like what type of new process was created, and according to that you can take the uh, appropriate action. Then for PowerShell script execution, the event ID is 4104. Then the privilege escalation. So for the privilege escalation, you need to understand what privilege escalation is actually, right? Like what is the meaning of this privilege escalation? So privilege escalation means an attacker gains higher level access. Attacker is basically injecting itself somehow as a low level user, but somehow it gains high level access, so maybe from a like a normal user to admin. So this particular event id 4672 in windows, it basically displays, it shows like special privileges assigned. Like if someone is logged in into your system, and some special privileges was assigned to that user, so this event id will be created. So you have to observe the logs, and then according to that you will get that idea, like somehow privilege escalation attack will be launched. So the indicators are like user suddenly gaining admin rights, your local users uh, somehow have the admin rights, right? The use of sudo or run as unexpectedly. So the command or these particular programs, they are basically increasing the use of sudo or run as. These two are commands based on linux. Then registry changes, right? So registry changes or any new service installation. So these are the indicators, these are the common indicators of privilege escalation attack. So again, you can check out the authentication.log auth.log file, and then you can look for the sudo command, look for the run as command, look for the registry changes or any service installation, right? So then we have lateral movement. So what lateral movement is, like whenever the attacker, if you are familiar with the ctf machines, or if you play some of ctf machines in order to prepare for any particular security level exam, like ejpt or oscp or ecpt, so you might be know what lateral movement is. So once the attacker privilege itself, so after the privilege escalation, the attackers moves laterally, right, from one system to another. So maybe attacker is basically using your one controlled compromised system to attack another system in your network or in your organization or in your infrastructure. So that is known as lateral movement. In lateral movement, we basically compromise one system, and then using that we compromise another one. So that is called lateral movement. So they use RDP, they use some services like RDP, SMB, or some PowerShell, right? So PowerShell remoting, WMI, PS execution, RDP, or SMB. So you have to observe that. These all are the indicators, right? You can also check out the logins from one machine to another using some admin credential. So the event ID is 4624, but the logon type is changed, right? Logon type will be 10 or 3, and then 7045 if some new services was installed, right? So these are the indicators when attackers move from one system to another. So that is called lateral. Then data exfiltration. So data exfiltration means, okay, before we talk about the data exfiltration, I have a query. So Prasanna is asking, hi Prasanna, difference between privilege escalation and brute force attack. So see, in brute force attack is like the objective of attacker is to guess your system credentials. So they have some generated or pre-generated or the available word list of possible user ID or passwords that you can use. So in brute force is basically they are using some combinations, like they have to launch the attack from alphabets using alphabet, and the password should be 8 characters long. So they basically launch the attack using 8 to 10 characters, and then all the alphabets, all the digits, all the special characters, and the combination will be used. So this is known as brute force attack. But in privilege escalation, attacker is already know your ID password, and now he wants to escalate the rights, because in your system some things a local user can do and something only admins can do. Like if you are familiar with the Linux, we have some directories, we have some command that you can run as a local user. But if you want to run some specific commands, but so you need admin rights. So privilege escalation means you basically uh, escalating your rights from local user to admin. So that is the difference between privilege escalation and brute force. In brute force, you are launching a attack using some combination of alphabets, characters, or digits on particular login panel to access the system. And in privilege escalation, you are basically improving your rights. So as in like local user to admin, or admin to super admin, or whatever the structure. Now we have data exfiltration. So how you will basically detect it? So what are the indicators? So first, like what is data exfiltration? So data exfiltration means like when your data is basically leaves your environment. So somehow the attacker access or compromised your environment, and then the attacker is trying to copy the data from your environment. So when data leaves your environment, it is known as data exfiltration. So attacker basically do these this attack via file upload, cloud sync, or maybe some custom ports, right? So you have to check, or what are the indications are, like the large data transfers, uploads to unknown domain. Like your data will be uploaded to some unknown domains. You are seeing the data transfers, but in very large amount. The use of uncommon port, like the port you are using in your infrastructure, but you are seeing the uh, uses of uncommon ports, like the 8080 or 4444 or 1234 or 2121. So if you are observing like your data is transferring on these uncommon port, so that might be the indicators of data exfiltration. And you need to observe with the help of some tools, so the Wireshark or NetFlow. So they basically are able to detect the large outbound traffic or some unknown destinations, right? This is also one of the hardest detections, but also the most important, because SOC analyst must detect when sensitive data is leaving the network unexpectedly. If you are not able to detect it, so attacker can download or basically copy all of your sensitive data, and then can use it further. Then the command and control, it is known as C2. So basically the indicators of this command and control, but first we have to know about like what is command and control or C2. It is known as C2 as well. So this particular attack is when the attacker basically maintains the communication with compromised host. The attacker somehow compromised your operating system or your infrastructure, and he is basically maintaining the communication. So you might basically seeing like the one IP or changing of IPs every few seconds. So as an SOC analyst, you have to look for repetitive outbound requests to unknown IPs, DNS tunneling, or some non-standard ports, right? So attacker is basically using some C2 servers, like command or control servers, to control the infected systems remotely. So detecting this means the catching them in real time. So they are basically somehow connected with your system and controlling your organization infrastructure with the help of C2 servers. So if you see the outbound connections to some unknown IPs or using some non-standard ports or the DNS tunneling, then that might be the indication. Then the suspicious PowerShell activity. So this particular PowerShell activity is like it is one of the favorite activity of hackers. You can say it in other words like the PowerShell is basically the hacker's favorite tool, right? So if you can detect some encoded or malicious PowerShell with event ID 4104, so that might be the indicators of you. So you can generate or you can run this command get win event log name Microsoft Windows PowerShell operation and then find str invoke web request. So SOC team basically often find malwares using PowerShell for download or privilege escalation. Malware is like one of the common reason for a success, like this is the common reason how an attacker successfully launch the privilege escalation or other things, right? So you have to detect the suspicious PowerShell activity in your infrastructure, and if you are able so you can easily prevent it. Then if your infrastructure running some web application, so you have to detect the web application based attacks as well, right? So the indications are like in this particular thing I take an example of SQL attack. So if you see the web logs, if you are running the web application in your infrastructure, so your web logs will be created. So if you see the repeated 404 or 403 status codes in your web logs, so that might be the indication. You can check out the SQL injection patterns, you can check out the unexpected post request. So the log file will be stored in Apache 2. So the access logs, you can grab the union select query, and web logs basically reveals a lot. So the brute force attack, SQL attack, XML attack, or the common web based attacks are simply visible here, because whenever the attacker is trying to do something on your web application, it will be logged in your web logs. So if you check out those web logs, it will be easy to detect the attack, and you can easily prevent your application. So now there is an assignment for you, like you need to launch the brute force in your own system, and then you have to detect it in your log. So the var log auth.log will be your directory, will be your file where your failed unsuccessful login attempts will be logged, and you can detect it. And then you can identify the MITRE technique ID. So you will use that framework as well. Okay. So this is for day 21, and now we will talk about the day 2022 tomorrow. So hopefully you enjoy this session. You will get to know the idea of indicators of the common attacks, how you will detect it, the common attacks like whatever I showed you today. So these are the most common attack, but not limited, right? There are multiple attacks that attacker will launch on your infrastructure. So you have to find some ways of all those attacks, like how you will detect it. If you have any query and question, you can ask me in the comment. Sayan Mondal is saying Wireshark and IDS work is same. Not that particularly. Wireshark is basically using for capturing the network traffic and analyzing it, and IDS is kind of filtering it. I don't see any new comment here. So thank you everyone for joining it. Connect tomorrow on the same time so that we will move forward with day 22. And if you are new here, make sure to check out all the other videos. Recently, I public the network pen testing videos as well, so you can check those videos also. And if you are interested in uh, penetration testing, then Bob Suit series is also live. You can check out. If you haven't subscribed it yet, you can subscribe, and make sure if you like the video, so drop some comments, share with others, post it on LinkedIn so others can also see it. With that note, I'm going to end the session for today. So thanks again for joining it. Take care. Bye bye. See you tomorrow.